Today's October 20th. The Yankees have punched their ticket to the World Series. The Dodgers and Mets battling it out tonight. And we're over here just going to throw some Pirates talk out there anyway. You're listening to the Bridge to Buctober podcast. Yins guys, thank you for listening to the Bridge to Buctober podcast, where we talk all about them Pittsburgh Pirates and that. My name is Josh, and I'm joined as always by, well, actually nobody. I just was saying that out of pure habit. Well, I noticed as soon as I hit record that I didn't have my screen up over here where I usually have it. And so I was just operating off of default while I did that. So there you go. We've got a Boylan's cream soda tonight. For our pseudo root beer choice, whatever. The game's on. I know that there's not going to be very many people joining me live tonight, because whatever game it is for you. For me, it is LA 2, New York Mets 1. There is another game on tonight that I'm sure most of the listeners of this podcast are going to be tuned into. I am currently just not in football mode yet, so we still got baseball, and that's what I'm all about. So, Dodgers have a chance to wrap this thing up tonight, and they have a 2-1 lead right now. Tommy Edman, the 4-hitter tonight, which is wild. Tommy Edman doubled in a couple runs, and the Dodgers have a 3-2 lead in the series too. So they could actually wrap this thing up, giving us the World Series matchup that we've been waiting for. So I guess we'll see what happens tonight, and if not, tomorrow night. But the Yankees are already in. World Series starts on Friday. I would like to know, I think I do know, but I would like to know if the World Series was always scheduled way in advance. Because like in the in the championship series, if there's 2 sweeps, and they're done last week, do they really wait a full week to go to the World Series? I don't believe that was the case in the past. But now, with TV and all the deals that go along with that, I'm sure that, since I can remember, it's been scheduled, and I don't know how quickly we adapt to that. But I want to make sure that I am live here. I want to make sure that some things are working. Nobody in the chat again. It says there's somebody there, so maybe. But either way, just wanted to make sure things were working before I got rolling on this thing and realized there's nobody out there. There's somebody out there sending stuff, and then I don't have any idea. So I just wanted to make sure. Anyway, we're going to talk about first base tonight, I think, pretty heavily. Even though it's kind of one of the easiest positions that we've had to talk about as far as what we've been doing is, Michael coming in always with the facts, getting to look things up. Always appreciate it, Michael. Thank you. 412 double play. Pretty sure dates are always set. Pretty sure Yankees will sell World Series tickets in September. That's fine. Like to say that I bought tickets for World Series Game 1, but I didn't know that you knew what day World Series Game 1 tickets were going to be on until we were like at least close. But maybe. I don't really know, because I didn't know that it was always set, the actual date. But maybe it is. Like, we knew this World Series date before. Like when I try to prepare our shows ahead of time. And so I'm looking down through and I'm saying, okay, we have X amount of shows before November 1st, which is the final I believe the final World Series game. Maybe not. November 1st will be our final show. Maybe it could end. Anyway, it's around there. But it would be over. But it actually could end before that. But that's game 7, right? But if it's a sweep, it could end before that. But anyway, so I noticed that, and I've probably noticed that every year and thought this same thing, and I've probably just been wrong about it forever. But I don't know. Maybe I'll look into that. So anyway, yeah, we're going to talk first base tonight. And then what do I have on here? Because I don't have everything, but I kind of made my notes on the card right over here. So that's kind of what I'm going off of. Oh, yeah, the Dodgers are running a bullpen game tonight. Currently pitching Anthony Bonda for the Dodgers. Let's go. Unbelievable. Oh, man. That is nuts. Anyway, they're running a bullpen game in the championship series, and we've seen it in the championship series. We've seen it in the World Series, all those things. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I think that's basically the gist of this, right? I mean, so we've got Yankees, we've got the game going on tonight, and just for, just for kicks, let's go ahead and start with the Yankees Guardians. I know it's not Pirates talk, and I know I front load the Pirates talk for a reason. We're going to get into first base. We're going to talk about everybody who's there and all that stuff, but I talked to some of my friends here who are Guardians fans, and they were really upset with how everything, I mean, obviously they had the moments, right? The postseason is like a weird example of like what baseball fandom can do and what kind of like takeaways from the postseason. Like Jhonkensy Noel, Big Christmas, the whole thing is going to be a mega story. People are going to remember this. There's people showing up with Santa hats and full Santa suits and all these things for Jhonkensy Noel. It was like a major event, that ninth inning game tying home run. And the interesting thing about it, he was like 1 for 17 in that series or something like that, or in the postseason. I know that when he came up and he had that swing Saturday night. Yeah, Saturday night. He had that swing. The camera was panned way up, even though it was a fly out. I sure thought it was gone. I thought he had done it again. But as he approached the plate there, as a, not a Guardians fan, and so haven't been like, I've just been watching the games, right? And enjoying the games and in the moments and all those things. But like when you watch that game and he walks up and I look down at the stat line that he has for the postseason and it says he has a 100 average. He's got 1 home run, 2 RBIs, which was the 2-run homer in the 9th inning in the other game, in game 3. 2 RBIs. I mean, that's literally the only thing he had done in the entire postseason. Yet he will probably be remembered as more a part of this postseason than Jose Ramirez, who had like a double down the line as his signature moment, right? And so, man, it is totally wild to me that that's the takeaway in a postseason series, but yet we tend to not be that way in the regular season. The fact that he has not been good at all isn't resonating with people. It's the fact that he hit the 2-run homer with 2 outs in the 9th inning to tie the game in game 3. Huge game. It didn't matter, right, in the end. But it did, right? There's also that thing where you're like, well, yeah, it did. I mean, it forced the game 4, and then you go on from there. It could have been huge, all that stuff. And I don't know, man. I just think, so I think back. So Friday, I was on NS9's new offseason show, The Point. A lot of fun. It's an around the horn style show. Go back and check it out. I was on there. I had a really good time. But they ask about Halloween movies that I don't watch. And so I thought, well, what if I throw in this like Halloween game in 2001 in the World Series where Derek Jeter hit the walk-off homer as it struck midnight. The whole Mr. November thing was born. It was this, crazy day in the scheme of baseball. We know, Derek Jeter, Hall of Famer, one of the best of his time. And we know him as Mr. November. Among many plays and things that he did, Mr. November was one of those things that we'll look back and know him as. And it all was born that day. And I think, in the lore and baseball history and all those things, I think that's going to be there. He plays for the Yankees, the most historic franchise in baseball history and all that stuff, the evil empire, all that. But Mr. November was born that day. I thought it was fun. The only reason I bring that up now is because if you go back, and I went back, I had to fact check. I had to make sure everything was right. And as I watched it, I was like, this is undoubtedly what I have to say, because it was dramatic with the bells ringing at midnight as he was walking up to the plate. Like, it was wild. And I didn't remember it being like that dramatic. It's been a while, right? But I remember watching. I would have been in my first year of college and sitting watching that game and just like glued to it, as I am most World Series, whatever. But after the game, when they interviewed Derek Jeter in Derek Jeter fashion, he said, if we don't win tomorrow night, none of this matters. So, like, it's wild that looking back, this is one of the, I'm sure he probably doesn't, the Mr. November thing, the whole thing that became what it was, he probably didn't realize that in the moment, but like, it mattered. No matter what, it mattered. That's all. It mattered. And yet, here's Derek Jeter saying, if we don't win tomorrow night, none of this matters. So I think that way when I think of this Jhonkensy Noel, the big home run, and all that. Like, they lost the series. So did it just not matter? Well, we're not going to forget the moment of Big Christmas. You know what I'm saying? It's a catchy name. It's the whole thing. So baseball is fun that way. That's all. Dave says, surprised that you're doing this while the Steelers game is on. I am too. Listen, we are 9:00 on Sunday night. I thought about doing something else. Jake is out tonight, so it was kind of one of the things I was like, well, if I go earlier, but I know, like, I'm going to have as many people tuning into this right now as I would have if I would have done it at 6:00. I'm guessing that. But if you can see in the background, I am all baseball, Dave. I am all baseball. I understand what other game is on tonight, but the Steelers game is on tonight. But I am still tuned in. I am still all in baseball mode. We got Jeff McNeil up with an 0-2 count, and the bases are loaded. This is wild. I love the postseason. I know it's going to be a lot better when the Pirates are in it, and it was a lot better when the Pirates were in it. But here we are. I'm doing this while the Steelers game is on. Shame on me. However, for most of you who will listen to this show or watch this show, it's not Sunday night anymore. It is Monday. So yeah, anyway, Michael, you put in here, top payrolls in MLB making the final series is exactly how the system is designed to work. I'll be glad to not have an underdog in the World Series this year. Just two evil empires. I will respectfully disagree about 98%. The actual system that is designed to work so that Cleveland can make it to the championship series, and so that Detroit and Kansas City can make it to the postseason, and Milwaukee can win a division and compete in the postseason. The system that's actually designed is a competitive balance system. We can talk about whether or not it's working, and that's fair, but free agency created the gap that we see. Completely. Free agency created the gap between small and large markets heavily, because teams like, the Pirates and so on, rightfully or not, once again, you can agree or disagree, it's kind of taken them out of the running to sign people like Barry Bonds as he left, and just all the things. Like, long gone are the days where a guy can stay with a franchise for his entire career outside of guys like Clayton Kershaw. Guys, even, There's some other names that even won't, but there are guys who can in those markets. Derek Jeter, you're going to have some guys like Aaron Judge will be a Yankee forever. We just don't have that luxury. You're going to have to trade players in Pittsburgh. And that's because of free agency. But the system that they're designing is shared revenue, which is not enough yet. They need to do something to make that better, right? There are ways to improve the system so that smaller markets can get more, a bigger piece of the pie that comes in. And maybe that's what all this TV deal stuff is going to be good for. Maybe all this TV deal stuff, as we see the Cincinnati Reds just signed a deal after Bally dropped them. They just signed a deal with FanDuel. FanDuel, I don't even know what it's called. I forget now. The FanDuel network, the FanDuel, let's look this up. FanDuel, they just signed a deal, unless I had a dream about this. Diamond Sports Group's one of those teams. Oh, it's branded. Well, let's see what this is. FanDuel Sportsbook, that's not it. We said Diamond Sports Group going through brand. FanDuel made the announcement Friday. Diamond's channels had been Bally Sports since opening day 2021. The name change will be FanDuel Sports Network. So FanDuel Sports Network, they signed with the Reds, at least one of those names. They've been broadcasting Bally since the beginning of 2021, and now they're going to be on FanDuel Sports Network, which is hilarious in and of itself. Hopefully that's not, a too soon comment, but, I guess let's be sensitive here and say it's ironic. But either way, the system in and of itself is designed to provide some revenue for smaller markets who can't get the revenue. And that system is essentially there's regular shared revenue, right, that comes in, but then there's also like the Yankees or the Dodgers, if once they go over the tax or the threshold, the CBT threshold, then they will pay a portion of that in. That gets divided evenly and sent to so many people and things like that. So those sort of things are put in place for competitive balance. That money that comes to the Pirates from that is pretty restricted. You have to pay it on. You have to spend it on payroll, or I think payroll or player development. And I think that's like that. It has to be. It can't be spent on anything else. So either way, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that baseball wants it this way. I don't think even in the slightest baseball wants it this way. I don't understand how we got there, but it is that way. It is the way that it is. It is much easier for the Yankees, albeit they haven't been there since 2009, so it's not like it's every single year they're there. And the Dodgers have won one World Series since 1988, so it's not like it's a guarantee that they're there and they're winning. And that one World Series that they've won was the 2020 season, which is a whole weird thing in and of itself, but not a full 162-game season. So if it ends up being the Dodgers, as they're in the lead here, and they just extended that lead with a home run by their big four-hitter Tommy Edman. That's hilarious. They talked about Tommy Edman going to the 4 spot and how he's not a power guy, and here he is hitting a 2-run double and a 2-run homer, all 4 runs driven in by the big-time power hitter, number 4 hitter of the Los Angeles Dodgers, Tommy Edman, which is, by the way, just a good trade. The Dodgers do it all well. They don't just spend. They also develop. They also trade well. They also just do the things that you would want your team to do. And they have all ability to do that. Anyway, we've talked about this a lot. I don't have all the facts, right? So I'm allowing myself, I know that, Gary Morgan and I have talked about this a lot because of all of the things. I just think that like baseball is trying, and I don't think that they're doing a good job. I think that shared revenue needs to be increased. I think if they could centralize all of the regional networks to be MLB and then sell that product to the different streaming platforms, YouTube TV, Hulu, Fubo, what's the other, DirecTV Stream, whatever they are, plus sell it to DirecTV, Dish Network, all that stuff, go to Spectrum and Comcast and all those, and let MLB handle that portion of things. And even like leave the Yankees network there, leave the Pirates network there. It's fine. But in a way that the Pirates used to get money from AT&T for all the broadcast rights of their games. All you do is you would work out a deal with MLB so that MLB pays for, I guess that doesn't work either. What it would be was MLB would then take it over. They would get all of the money for it, and they would have all the rights for it. They would pay essentially for the rights anyway, but they'd have to get all the revenue from it in order for this to work. But whatever it is, if they could centralize that, get all the revenue, and then somehow work that out so that it can be distributed, or maybe there's only a certain amount of revenue that has to go to MLB. That way it gives teams like the Yankees the ability to still make money on top of that. Because essentially it's not necessarily fair either to say, I'm the Yankees, I've built this brand for the last 100 and some odd years, and I should be able to make more money than the Marlins, who have only been around since 1997 or 1994 or whatever. Like, they've built that brand. They've earned the right to say, I make more money because partially because I have more people, but also because we're the Yankees. You know what I mean? And so there is a little bit of that where, you know, if the Yankees are over there making a ton of money and nobody's showing up to go to Pirate games, how does it make sense that the Yankees get the same amount of money that we do? It doesn't. The Yankees should get more. They're doing better. They're making more money, because what you end up doing is saying, well, if everybody gets the same amount, everybody's still not going to spend the same amount. Or if they do, they're not going to do as good of a job as, like, you can look at the Dodgers and say the Dodgers have all the money to spend, the Yankees have all the money to spend, but in the last 10 years, the Dodgers have spent money better than the Yankees have. Granted, it's only equaled one World Series in that time, but it's still working more. So I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts there. And like I said, it's kind of confusing. There's a lot of good points on all sides. But I think as far as what MLB tries to do is they try to create a system that can kind of defeat and close that gap in. Dave says they need a salary cap. Also says he's thankful I'm doing this while the game is on. I appreciate that. I thought about saying something on Twitter about, hey, watch the game and you know, listen at the same time. I think most people would say, who cares about the Pirates? And then they would give me a hard time about it. But salary cap is one of those options that you could do. And there's a lot of different ways that you can put in a cap. I believe they do already have a cap. It's not a hard cap like the NFL. I'm appreciative of that. I hate the NFL's system. I can't stand every single year looking at the NFL teams and having no idea who plays for who, because they just cut people and they don't owe them any money anymore. MLB has all guaranteed contracts. NFL just started doing that from Kirk Cousins, and it's essentially mostly just quarterbacks. But it's also just, I can't stand how it's like watching college football, because you don't ever know who's on your team and who's going to be an impact player and who's not. I can't stand that. Well, at least with baseball, you do have some sort of ability to have guys long-term. And maybe it's because there's more guys highlighted, that even if there's like 2 or 3 guys that change that are starters in the NFL, if you have 2 or 3 guys that are starters that change, it's kind of like a big deal, because you build everything around guys that you can consistently throw to. You know, if there was another wide receiver for the Steelers, you guys would be, you know, like, it'd be a big deal. Like, we would know, everybody would know that there's a new guy there. And it's like, you know, losing that position is big. Losing a quarterback, all of a sudden you have 2 quarterbacks, but either one of them. I mean, there's all those things. It's the idea that I don't like that system. I think that once you hit that ceiling, and then you have to just say, well, I mean, I like this guy, but I got to get rid of him because he makes too much money. Like, that's silly. I believe the players should make that money. So I think if you do something where it's different, like I think the NBA, you can go beyond the cap if you're retaining a player that was already on your team. Something like that. I don't pay attention to the NBA, but I think that's what I understand of it. So there's some different ways to do a salary cap. I certainly don't like the NHL where a player alone can only make so much money. There's a cap for the player himself. So I think baseball could find a creative way of doing it. The biggest problem with baseball is there's not enough shared revenue. And as a result of that, there's no floor. So if you just had a floor that made teams spend a little bit more, the problem is, let's say you're the Pirates and you're going through this. Think about last year when they went out and they signed Aroldis Chapman for $10.5 million. That was an overpay. Why would you do that? Well, I mean, I think we understand in hindsight now that the Pirates probably did that because they needed to land the guy. And so they had to overpay. They'd already missed out on like 4 starting pitchers that they were trying to get, and they lost them to other teams. And so they said, we got to go all in on this. And so like what you would see is for teams that are doing something like that, they could go in and build a bullpen and pay guys too much money to pitch in the bullpen. They could get a guy like Grandal or Rowdy Tellez, and instead of paying him $3.2 million, they would offer him $6 million. You know what I mean? Just little things like that. They'd get the same players. They'd pay them more money, and then they'd hit that floor, and you'd have the same problem. You'd have a team not trying to win. So I think, yes, a salary cap, but I think in a way there is one. And the only reason I say there is one is because you see every offseason, you see teams that are intentionally saying, we want to get below that threshold. Now, as a Pirates fan or a fan of a smaller market team than the major markets, you're saying like, no, please blow through that tax threshold. We want you to, because the more they go above it, the more shared revenue you're going to get for those teams. We get another home run here, Will Smith. I think we did. We certainly did. The Dodgers are about to head to the World Series tonight, guys. We are about ready to have the mega teams, which, good for baseball. Dodgers, Yankees, 6-1 Dodgers now. They have a 3-2 lead in the series. But Dodgers, Yankees is going to be good for the game. There's a lot of stars that are going to be involved in the World Series. I think it'll be a very entertaining World Series. You got Ohtani, you got Judge, you got Soto, you got Betts, you got Freeman, and who am I thinking of here? Giancarlo Stanton, and it looks like that's another one. Nope, caught at the wall. Anyway, I don't know, man. I think it's entertaining, but I understand. Dude, it almost wasn't this way. Like, it could have been the Padres. They were right there. It almost wasn't this way. Phillies, Mets, obviously that's going to be big. But like the Royals, Tigers could have put up a little more. Probably not, but they could have put up a little more of a fight. It could have been Guardians. But you had a lot of teams that were kind of in the mix with lower payrolls this season. And when you get to that postseason, like, yeah, I mean, we can say all that we want about this is what it is, but I think this could swing either way. The Guardians, it's not like the Guardians were just overmatched. They made a lot of mistakes. They had a lot of guys who didn't hit. Their main pitcher in one of the games that they played went 1 1/3 inning and just got hammered. So, I think the Guardians made a lot of mistakes in their own right. They had some defensive blunders, and some of those things were not things they did throughout the season, but that's what the postseason does, man. That's just what it does. So I don't know. I thought I'm not going to make a case for parity like MLB does, because they do. They make a case for parity a lot, And it's hard to argue when you say, look at the World Series winners. They're not the same teams all the time. It's been a long time since you had the three-peat of the Yankees. It's just different. I don't know. That was a lot to go into, but I appreciate the chat, and I don't mean to just like blast it. I want it to be part of a conversation. So I hope you understand that, and I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Michael's a good dude. So anyway, yeah, I think the system is designed for that, and I think maybe come next CBA in 2026, we might see some ways to get closer to that. I think shared revenue is a big deal. If they can centralize media and broadcast rights, it's going to be a huge difference. That's where most of that money comes from. Most of it. So, the Pirates are doing fine with their TV ratings and all that stuff, but it's up to them to make money now. And it's like, there's a lot on that. So, all right, let's, what do we got here? Let's take a little time to talk about bullpens and the 6-man rotation and openers and whatever else. Okay. The Pirates have what we would say when we talked about it, maybe 10 starters on their team currently that have a chance to have an impact in the rotation at the major league level next season. And that's young and there already, but I mean, you've got your 5 that were there at the end of the year and what we expect to be given the best chance to be the same 5 going into next year. But then you have Bubba Chandler and Thomas Harrington. You have Ashcraft and Burrows. And then you have Oviedo coming back from injury eventually in the season. So at some point, like there are 10 guys who have a shot to be in the rotation and doing well. Now, this year, you had Skeens and Jones there. They mostly ran with a 6-man rotation of sorts, openers or spot starts or actually 6 guys, whatever it is. If there was a day off, they necessarily didn't have to, but they made sure that there were 5 days in between every start from specifically Skeens, but Jones as well. And so essentially what you had was a 6-man rotation. It's going to be interesting to see how that is handled in 2025 because this team has, you've got 5 starters if they go in there and everything's the same, with Falter and Ortiz at the bottom and the big 3, Jones, Skeens, Keller. If everybody returns, and I say that in light of like if they decide to move Jones, it would be hard to kind of argue that. Maybe you get another starter off the free agent market to kind of backfill that so you're not rushing guys or whatever. But if Bubba Chandler and Thomas Harrington, Jared Jones made the non-40-man guy, made the opening day roster last season. They set the precedence. Doesn't mean it's going to happen every year. But Thomas Harrington and Bubba Chandler are going to be given a shot. Off the 40-man will not be added in the offseason. They will get a shot to crack this team. Ashcraft will be there. Burrows will be there. I actually don't have a timeline on Oviedo right now. I don't know if they've said it and I missed it or if I even knew it at one point, but already forget it. I'm not really sure. But I don't believe opening day is an option for him. I think it's going to be, May or something like that. But either way, when you look at it that way, Skeens and Jones, they didn't want to go every 5 days. Why would that change for Chandler? Why would that change for Ashcraft, who actually dealt with injuries last year? Burrows, who came back from Tommy John last year. Why would that change? I think you can expect them to possibly run another 6-man rotation. All it does is extend Skeens a little bit longer. I wouldn't argue it if they really are pushing to be a playoff team and you save some of those bullets for the postseason. If they believe they're going to be, right, they should be planning as if they'll be there. The last thing you want to do is to go into the postseason with Paul Skeens and then have to take him out after 4 innings because he's reached his innings limit. it's a thing of baseball right now to do the openers. It also taxes your bullpen. So I'm not sure that's the route I want to go. And here are, Tampa's gotten it away with it. The Dodgers are now getting away with it. They're running a bullpen game and they're getting away with it. They're not even using a bulk guy, right? They just went reliever, 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 and they've got a good bullpen to do it. If Jake was on here, he hates the opener. He can't stand bullpen games. Actually, he really hates the opener and then the bulk guy, but he would be going on about that. But I think a 6-man rotation is a possibility for this team. Maybe using a guy like Burrows or Ashcraft immediately in the bullpen as a long man, like they did Ortiz last year. He's the first guy to step in case of an injury. He will get spot starts when they'll know when they're getting him. They'll be able to save him for those because it'll be when the schedule has no days off and it's 4 days in between starts. They're going to plug in a guy and just push it back another day. I think there could be a case made that sometimes in those cases you could do something where I'm trying to line that up where you would do it, but like make sure Keller goes in 5 days or like with 4 days in between, because I think that actually hurt him. But maybe he just gets used to it if they know it's coming right out of the gate. So maybe that's it. Maybe he changes his routine for that. But I don't think that was just the thing that they did and because of Skeens. They could do the same thing for Chandler, Harrington, Ashcraft, Burrows, any of those guys. Even Oviedo coming off of an injury, they don't really want to throw him out there again and do the same thing that got him in that position in the first place. So I think there's a lot to that. And you're watching it in the championship series right now. The Dodgers are running a bullpen game. And I just don't know that there's a way that we can get to a place where we're avoiding this entirely. This is part of the game now. And I think if that's the case, the Pirates can't afford to not be trying everything just because, well, that's not what we do. And I think while they kind of said we don't like a 6-man rotation prior to last year, they went ahead and did it last year anyway, without naming it. Just name it. Go with a 6-man rotation. Have one, or like I said, or go with a long man, have 6 starters out there and give them spot starts. You know exactly when it's going to happen. And then you have multiple guys, give them more MLB innings. I thought Ashcraft could have shown up last year before the injuries. I thought, get this guy up here, let him pitch out of the bullpen. You can stretch him back out in the offseason, whatever it was. They'll have the ability to do some things like that this year. And go from that. Mark Vientos 2-run homer. Mets are not giving up. It's good. Don't lay down. So I don't know. It's one of those things where you're saying, let's understand that even though they're saying we're going into next year, like this is a big year for the Pirates. This is a very important offseason. It's a critical offseason for the Pirates specifically for, let's take Pirates out of it, right? Because Pirates includes the whole org, the history of the org, the fan base, the whole thing, as far as I'm concerned. But like this current front office, it's a big offseason, but probably the biggest off, not just for them. It's the most important offseason in a long time. So, man, it's a big deal. They're going to have to essentially save their jobs. And I mean, from Sherrington down to Shelton and beyond. I think this is sort of I think the ownership is saying, okay, we're going to move on if this doesn't work. But Ron's in here. How you doing, Ron? I got a Boylan's cream soda tonight. Ron's always wanting to know the root beers or whatever that we got. I got a Boylan's cream soda. If you haven't had Boylan's, that's good stuff too. I need to get some more 1919 in here though. Dave says they need lefties in the bullpen if they lose those 2 free agent lefties. Yeah, I mean, So essentially they have Wentz in the bullpen, and that's it as far as left-handed. I'm not counting on him, obviously. So they will need to go out and get lefties. Whether they bring Chapman back, I don't know. I hope they don't bring Beeks back. I would assume both of those guys go to free agency, and they're going to have to get 2 new lefties. But they will need to get 2 lefties. And the other if one of those lefties is a guy like Chapman, I could see you signing those guys and being good with it. If you don't get a guy like Chapman, like at that caliber, then you may even need to add another reliever to be a safety net in case Bednar does what he did last year, if he has problems. So, yeah. So it's there. Let's talk first base. Let's move on to first base here. And this is our last positional check-in here. So we've talked about every position all the way through the field. The purpose of this exercise essentially is it's the postseason right now. We're waiting for the offseason to start. The Pirates are going to have some decisions to make on who to add. And this was our way of saying, what do we have now? And that will kind of help us know who we need to add. And this has been a lot of things centered around first base this year. Rowdy Tellez is the first baseman. We all know that story. Before him, it was Carlos Santana. We know that story. First base has been an issue in Pittsburgh for a long time. I know a lot of us probably go all the way back to Kevin Young when we had a year in, year out first baseman that we knew was going to play first. There were some Adam LaRoche a couple of years, like 2.5 years or so, where I thought we got pretty good production out of the position, but it was only 2.5 years. Even in the playoff years, it was kind of mixed around. You had Gabby Sanchez, you had Garrett Jones, Justin Morneau was brought in, and I'm trying to think, John Jaso. I don't know if John Jaso was probably not there. Was he there for a playoff year? I don't believe so. But either way, kind of moved around and was never really a reliable position even then. And so I know I'm forgetting somebody that played first base during that time, but either way, a lot of talk this offseason has come down to Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds is currently a left fielder. When we talked about the outfield, I think the first thing you do this offseason is you look for the best player possible, and this is trade or free agency, not just free agency. You look for the best possible at one of those positions. It has to be a middle of the order bat. It has to be an impact player. What they get at that position, whether it's first base or left field, I don't care which one, but what they get at that position needs to be an impact bat. And so let's say for a minute that it is a left fielder. My next step, while I'm also doing bullpen and shortstop, my next step is, can I get an upgrade at first base or right field? An upgrade means this team is going to be motivated to, if they can't improve indefinitely, like it has to be an actual, like essentially like an improvement, but also reliable improvement from who they have in right field. They will be going. They will not cut ties with, at least I don't think, unless it's a trade, Jack Suwinski and Brian De La Cruz. And everybody says, oh my gosh, here we go. The thing is both of those guys have power. Jack's hit 19 home runs one year, 26 the next, right? And then he fell apart for a season. Brian De La Cruz has hit 40 home runs in the last 2 seasons with 19 and 21. You're not, that kind of power is expensive. If they can get one of those 2 guys to figure it out, then they've got a very affordable power bat in their lineup that will help this team win. Now, we've already acquired our big piece, whether that's the first baseman or the left fielder. If it's the left fielder, then I think you focus on still first base and right field. Because if you end up with a first baseman who's more reliable and better, or at least equal power potential, but more reliable than what you have out of Sawinski and Brian De La Cruz, both of those guys have options. You can send them to AAA and continue to try to get that production from them, and Reynolds can play right field. If you get a right fielder, Reynolds still plays first in that scenario, and that guy plays right field, and you make them try to be better than that guy and force their way on there, right? But they do have options. And then if you had gotten that first baseman right out of the gate, then you just leave Brian Reynolds in left field, and then you still do that look and say, let's see if we can get another outfielder. Now it's just outfield. And if you can get another outfielder, then you can decide right or left field. If you can still get that outfielder that can be better, you know what I mean? But that doesn't have to be a middle of the order guy because you already got one at first base. So, I mean, you're not going to get Pete Alonso, right? But he's going to be a free agent, and let's say the Pirates just go nuts and get Pete Alonso or something. He would be a middle of the order guy playing first base. Now you have a little bit, that you can mess around with, and Reynolds stays in the outfield. So I think it's not a guarantee that he moves to first for that reason. But I think he would move to first if you were to say, we got a guy who we think can hit in the middle of the order and play left field. Like a Tyler O'Neill, who will likely be a free agent. Tyler O'Neill would play left field, and he's good defensively. If he can just stay healthy the full season, that's a really big pickup for the middle of the batting order. Plays left field. Reynolds can either go to right field or first base, depending on what else you do in the offseason. So, who else is here? Now that we've gotten the Brian Reynolds piece of this out of the way. Billy Cook, Connor Joe, Jared Triolo even, Andy Rodriguez even. I'm going to pause on two guys here that I've heard brought up. Henry Davis has to hit before I'm even thinking about what position he's playing. Leave him at catcher, make him hit. If he can hit and force his way into the lineup when you have somebody else catching that also is hitting, now you have a problem that you can try to solve using first base or DH eventually or whatever. And Joey Bart's the other one. Joey Bart's offensive ceiling is not that of a first baseman. And I say that cautiously because I'm not a positional stereotype. Is that how I've been wording that? Either way, I don't care about what position you play to what you do offensively anymore. And the reason I don't is because shortstops and center fielders hit home runs now. And if that's the case, those were positions in the past that you didn't need a lot of offense from. You got the defense from those positions, and you get the offense from the corners. Up the middle's defense, the corners is your offense. So if the guys up the middle are hitting and playing well, and you've got a guy with 40 homer potential playing center field right now. Last year, going into the year, he was playing shortstop. But you got 40 homer potential in center. You've got guys like Bobby Witt Jr. playing shortstop, hitting a ton of home runs. And so, there's just, the positional stuff is gone. It's absolutely gone. You just have to build your lineup with guys who hit home runs and guys who get on base and guys who can run and guys who can move, whatever it is. I think anymore, you're just building your lineup with as much power as you can. That seems to be the way the game is right now. These pitchers are not going to let us string 5 hits together. So just give me everybody with a potential to hit the ball out, and we're going to be all right. We're going to score a lot of runs. So, that's kind of where I'm going. Let's check a couple of these here because Ron's saying B-Ray on first with Endy backing him up if Endy's not traded by then. So, sure, all those things are possible. I don't really care for Endy Rodriguez either at first base. I mean, some of these young guys, Endy has already had a lot of time playing some different positions, so it's a little bit different for him. But for me, I'd much rather focus this offseason on getting a first baseman who can rake. If I'm moving anybody on the team to first base, your absolute best option is Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds is a 30-homer guy if he's playing first base. I've been saying that for the last couple of weeks. I'm really buying in on this Reynolds move to first base. The way he sits down into his stance, the way that he rakes when he's DHing is just kind of proof that if he's not running around in the outfield and he's got his legs underneath him, this guy's going to hit 30 home runs. Like, I just believe that that's very possible for him. So I really want to see if we're moving anybody to first base. That's a long-term change if you're talking about young guys or at least controllable guys in a case of like a young guy or a guy like Reynolds who signed for a while. If I'm trying to get a long-term option at first base, man, it's got to be Brian Reynolds. Because if you move Endy there and it starts to work, you're sticking with Reynolds in the outfield. And quite frankly, I'd much rather open that up for Reynolds at first base, and then you just don't have to worry about anyone else playing first base. He's a switch hitter. He wants to play every day. If he does get a day off, you're going to have a guy like Triolo, Billy Cook, or Connor Joe on the roster. And that's it. Now, the question is, as I just said that sentence, is Connor Joe returning to this roster? I would think probably not. I would guess probably not. Connor Joe is probably... Billy Cook is essentially Connor Joe with better defense and can play center field. So he adds center field. He's going to do corner outfield. He's going to do first base. And then he also can do center field. In his history, he's played a little second and third as well. I wouldn't count on that. I don't think there's any reason to do that. Maybe in an emergency situation, you can maybe throw him in there, but I wouldn't worry about that. I wouldn't even focus on that at all because you have so many guys that can play those three positions. I mean, IKF and Jared Triolo right now can play all three, and my goal would be to replace a starting shortstop on this team, which means Jared Triolo and IKF can just focus on those three positions, and then I can also throw Triolo at first if that's who I have on my roster. He can do it for the 3 games that Reynolds doesn't play, right? So I'm not worried about that. Dave says, I've never seen Reynolds play first base. I haven't either. And what we know about the first base thing is we saw him taking ground balls. They had the conversation. I think Kevin Gorman had a lot of conversation with him that day or whatever. And he essentially said, I've been saying this for 3 years. It's somewhere along the line, somebody had said, Brian's been talking about this for the last 3 years. And it wasn't that Brian was saying, move me to first base, but it was him saying, it was Reynolds saying that, hey, this is a skill that I have in my skill set that I know I can do. And he made those statements when he was talking about it, where he said, if this can make me more athletic in the outfield, I'm all about it. Anything that you can do to move in different ways and be more athletic, I'm all about it. So there was a little bit of Reynolds just saying, I just want to take ground balls. I just want to do something different so I can stay fresh. And so here you go. Ron says he played it in college. So, I mean, he has this in his toolbox, I guess you could say. He has played first base. So this isn't a total foreign thing. I also I can encourage you. And I know that Bryce Harper started off as a catcher and then moved to the outfield, but Bryce Harper's move to first base has been it's gone extraordinarily well. So I think that Brian Reynolds, as healthy as he is and is, as much as he cares about what he does in his body and all those things, I think he's all about it. I think if that's what it meant, that if they were able to land a guy like Tyler O'Neill, or if they were able to trade for a guy in the outfield that could be a big time option, I think he'd be willing to move to first base. He said as much, that he'd be willing to move to first base. He just could be a big time weapon there. If he's average fielder, that's all we've had at first base for years. So it's not, it's not anything that we can't deal with. So Ron says Bart's earned the starting catcher position with all the others vying for backup. I think it's true, kind of. I mean, he did it for 1 year. He's been in the league for a while. So I think he's earned the front seat, the best chance to get it. But if all things are equal, I think it goes to Bart. But if all things aren't, he absolutely could be the backup. And actually, I think he'd be well suited as the backup. But you also have to remember that like catchers are different these days. They don't play every day. And so catchers are going to split a lot of time. He's not going to play more. Even if he's the starter, he's not going to play more than 120 games, especially with this group behind him. Maybe maximum 120 games. I don't know though. I think last year it was like 60 something and Grandal was right there and they were, and he spent a little bit of time on the injured list, but still like he was at 60, 70 games. So even then he's probably maybe getting to 100 games with the two guys behind him and everything and the whole thing. And you just don't know what you're going to get from Bart going in next year, which is also why I'm not moving him to first base. I don't know if he's even going to repeat 13 home runs. And even if he does, like, don't you think we could have done better? Like if Reynolds is at first base, I just said he's got the potential to hit 30. I don't think Bart does. So I think it's there. But either way, the Pirates have a lot of depth. They just need to figure out who their starting lineup is. And then you can really like their depth. Until then, I don't love it. We've mostly stayed away from the potential of free agents and whatever. But it's kind of interesting when you think about it. If they don't get that left fielder and they do have to go to the free agency for first base, Jose Abreu, which kind of fell off, is 38 years old. Carlos Santana is now 39. I got him written down here. Goldschmidt's 37. Yuli Gurriel's 41. Turner 40. Mark Canha 36. And there's some other guys in there. But like a lot of those guys, I could just see the Pirates signing those guys to a 1-year deal, trying to say, give me your best. And if it's not good enough and we need to make a move at the deadline, we'll do it. But give me your best and hold down first base for us. It just buys another year where we're not, it's not like we're just throwing Billy Cook there or Triolo there and saying, yeah, let's go with that. It's not like we're going out and the only way we can improve the position is by signing a long-term deal, which if it's a long-term deal and the guy's not as good as Reynolds, I kind of don't like it. You know what I mean? I don't want to commit long years to first base unless I'm committing those years to Brian Reynolds. That's my opinion. I don't know if that's the team's opinion. So, I don't know. I think there's a lot there. Ron says Bart has a very good arm to slow down the resurgence of the running games. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of going a little bit back to first base here. Bart does have a good arm. Henry Davis probably has the best arm of the group. There's other parts too. And yeah, I mean, catchers have good arms. Bart does. I like Bart behind the dish. I think there's some defensive metrics that don't. I think he's fine. And I think if he can give us offense, that's our big problem right now. Is we could go for a defensive first catcher if we had a lineup that was actually scoring more than league average runs. And we don't. So right now we have to go with whoever he can hit. So yeah, I mean, Ron says B-Ray at first, Cruz in center, BDLC if he hits in the lineup with some pop everywhere in the lineup. That's the goal. You've got to create more power. And you just need BDLC to work out. He might not get a shot to, right? And he might. So it's all up to be there. Bucko Mike's here. How you doing, Bucko Mike? Thanks for stopping in. Tough one for the Guardians. I'm sure you have a lot of Guardians friends in that. So we talked about it a little bit earlier in this. Go back and listen to the beginning after we're finished here. But yeah, so sticking to first base here, and then we'll kind of wrap this thing up. Personally, my opinion, my dream would be that you do get a middle of the order left fielder, outfielder type that you can put out there and Reynolds can move to first base. I think you get a long-term option there. And I don't think it has to be, like I said, I don't think it has to be one of those free agents. It could be a trade. If it is, I think it's awesome. But I could see you getting like a, 3-4 year deal, 2 to 4 year deal out in left field that could be a big time option and move Reynolds to first. And then Reynolds can be long-term there, playing just about every day. I don't know, 25 to 35 home runs. It seems crazy to think that because I just haven't ever seen him as a 35 homer guy. But when you watch this, like, what do those numbers end up looking like if he's got his legs underneath him all year? Man, it is interesting. Guys develop more power later in their careers as well. When they start to, he already knows the strike zone very well, so maybe that won't apply to him. He does know the strike zone well. He does a good job picking out his pitch and whatever, but I don't know. It's interesting. First base seems to be a hot, it's an opportunity to improve this team vastly. And whether that's a left fielder or an actual first baseman, they really have an important task ahead of them. It could be a big deal. So, Bucko Mike, by the way, just to, even though this wasn't a catcher thing, but, closely related, we've talked a lot about it. He says Endy, Bart, and Grandal, the catchers. He's bringing Grandal back. So, yeah, we're not going to go with this one. Bucko Mike, you start talking about Kutch again, we got to go out. So, here we go. We're going all over the place here. He's staying there. Reynolds the DH, he's saying. Oh, geez. I mean, I could see that, but once Kutch is gone. But I don't know why. If Reynolds can play first, though, you solve the first base position, and that's why I'm okay with it. We can use DH for someone else. We've got plenty of guys on this team who don't really play great defense. So there's a lot of options for guys to DH in one way or another. I mean, think about telling Henry Davis, like, bro, just don't even worry about catching. Because the potential there for Henry Davis, the potential there is big. So if he could figure out the bat, he could be a very good player. And if he doesn't have to worry about fielding and just worries about hitting, you figure as hard as he works, he could make it happen. But anyway, it is time to get out of here. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Always appreciate it. Let's check that score just so that for those of you who are listening to this afterwards. Oh man. So halftime, it's Jets 15, Steelers 13. Whew, tense one. And we still got Dodgers. I think it's still 6-3 in that game. Although, if I'm checking, I should. Yeah, it's still 6-3 in that game. Top of the sixth, Dodgers win. They seal it. And then we wait for Friday to come along. World Series starts Friday night, right?
Friday
is the start of the World Series. We'll talk once more with World Series matchups on Thursday, and we'll have a little bit of fun with it. I mean, we're going to talk about some Pirate stuff, obviously. This is what we do, but we'll probably make our picks and everything. So make sure you show up Thursday night for the live show. Keep a look on YouTube. If you're not subscribed, hit subscribe. You'll get those notifications, and we'll go from there. But we'll get our picks in. Excuse me. That was awesome. We'll get our picks in on Thursday. Whew. Choking on whatever that was. Hey, until Thursday, let's go Bucks, guys. Thanks again. Always appreciate it. World Series is coming.
Thanks for listening to my dad and Uncle Jake on the Bridge to Buctober podcast. Follow them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Bridge2Buctober. Don't forget to subscribe so you know when new episodes are released. Clear the deck, cannonball coming, and let's go Bucks!